Well, hello everyone, and welcome to your NARSA weekly update for the week commencing Monday, the 26th of August 2024. It's Gary here again. Thanks very much, as always, for taking the time to join me. Do you know what? Now, I'm not going to get hysterical here because it's only Ross County and it's the very beginning of the season, and I know that I've been a bit flippy-floppy on the last few podcasts, but it feels like there's light at the end of the tunnel based on last week's activities, not just the game. Of course, we do have potentially nothing from the club confirmed, of course, yet, but there is potential that we could be back home for the League Cup next round on the 21st of September, which, as you'll know, is a week earlier than the original, what was it, aspirational date, I think is what the chairman said. And that's all right. So what was that, like 3 games, 4 games? I can't remember exactly what, 3 games maybe at Hampden. So the ability to be able to go, like, if you'd have went backwards and someone said, look, beginning of the season is going to be a wee bit hectic, you're going to get a draw away at Hearts, you're not going to be at Ibrox for 3 games, and there's going to be some tough times in the Champions League. However, the rest of the season turned out spectacularly well. You would kind of take that, wouldn't you? And with that light at the end of the tunnel, where the team seems to be doing quite well, Ben Davies is out the door. I'll get to that on the shout-outs in a wee bit. And what I mean by that is not thank the Lord that Ben Davies is gone, but there's a wee bit of transfer activity, like purposeful, strategic, it feels like, transfer activity, with just off the back of a good performance and result, and especially against the team that kind of started our demise last season. And we have a Europa League draw to look forward to this week, obviously the end of the transfer window, as I briefly mentioned there. So, I think things are pretty good. It feels good. Obviously, it always feels good after a good performance and result, like I said. But it feels like progress to me, folks, and I'm gonna take it. And obviously, this is a very, very big week. But we'll get the game that was out of the way first, and that, of course, was the 6-0 victory over Ross County this past Saturday morning. And it was just, for me, it was just more like it, wasn't it? It wasn't exactly all completely cruise control either, to be very honest. I mean, we still had Super Jack Butland, who had to make a couple of good saves, especially like one before they even scored, a really good save actually, and then one a wee bit later on there. So good to see him back to his commanding best. And I thought all of our goals were great, each in their own way. Maybe not every single one was a worldly or a screamer or anything like that, but some of especially the kind of first 3 or 4 goals were so well worked, and it was just pressing, it was getting some space, it was being creative and brave in the space, and doing what we feel we know that this team can do, but we just haven't seen it for a very, very long time, if you go back to including the end of last season as well. Another 2 goals for, I don't know what to call him now. I don't know if I should keep calling him CD9, because when I call him CD9, he still does a great job. But I think we should maybe start to think about him as Lionel Dessy as well. Either one of the two. We'll maybe use them interchangeably as we go forward. But another 2 goals for him, so that's a great return for the beginning of the season. 2 for Matondo, 2 assists for Matondo as well. 1 for Tom Lawrence, and then 1 for the returning Danilo. So, I mean, that's all of our forward players getting on the score sheet. Not every single one of them, of course, but, folks that we would be expecting to see goals from, we get goals from, and so delighted for Danilo to pounce on that defensive error at the end there and slot it home for number 6. And then, of course, we changed the team a wee bit at the end, probably with one eye on this coming weekend, and then we're in cruise control. It got a wee bit disjointed after that, but everyone just, it seemed, let's go back to Danilo for a second, actually. Not even a month ago, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, everybody had him out for 6 months because Rangers put a video out there. It looked like he's limping. Philippe Clement says that's just the way he walks, relax, everything's okay. We're like, yeah, sure, we've heard that before. And then he is managing him back very, very well, and it's great to get a return on that. Probably very, very meaningful for him. So yeah, I thought it was really brilliant. I really did. And I get the caveat that it is just Ross County, but you need to beat the teams that are in front of you, and Ross County were in front of us there, and I don't know that everyone will beat them 6-0, let's just say that. So brilliant return for us. It was in terms of our endeavour, in terms of our effort, in terms of our inventiveness. It was direct, it was flowing, we mixed it up in a good way. And I think we need to do that. I mean, take a leaf out of the Rangers women's team's book and just go for the jugular in every single game. Get that game completely out of sight. It felt actually quite alien on the weekend there. It felt like such a long time since we'd been in that position where we can just enjoy the last half hour of a game and just ease into it and have a bit of banter and hopefully that's a real catalyst for the team. They have to be feeling good about themselves anyway as they get back into training and all the tactics that are needed for a good performance and result for this week. Positives, the result and a nice return and a goal difference was really good. The goals and assists by our front line was great. The variety, as I mentioned earlier, of the goals was great. And more minutes for returning players and our academy boys too was really, really good. Have honestly very, very little negative to say on that. I'm a wee bit worried, and I don't know if this is my inner Ronnie, my dad. There was always something at the end of a game where he's like, yeah, that was brilliant, but, and then insert negative comment here because he was just terrified that things were going to go wrong. But my fear is that Jeffy is going to become the new Todd Cantwell and just get booked for every single challenge that he puts in and getting zero benefit of the doubt. I don't know. I'm hoping I'm not being a prophet of doom on that, but that's kind of what I get an impression that it feels like it possibly could be, because we seem to have one person in that team that is like that and no other teams seem to have that as well. In terms of the stats, I got these stats from Live Score. 75% possession, which felt about right, 15 shots on goal, 10 on target, really good return there to to Ross Counties. 3 on target with 2 on goal, which, as I said earlier, Jack Butland did what he had to do. On the referee watch, I had never seen that referee before. Ross Hardy is the fellow's name, and I thought he did really well. He kept up with the play, did his job, seemed to be always talking all the time. I don't know if he was talking to the players or talking to VAR, the VAR assistants, or both, maybe at the same time, but he did a good job, so keep going, young man. And I'm not saying that Jeffy didn't deserve to get booked for his challenge or anything, back to the negatives part there. I just worry that it becomes a habit for officials to just say, this guy, he goes in once, he gets a yellow card. So the referee gets 7 out of 10 for that one game this week. I'm kind of pretty sure I don't need to tell you what one it is, but I'll do so anyway. It's away to that mob from the East End, and that's on Sunday the 1st of September, 7:30am Eastern Standard Time, 12:30pm UK. There's been, you know what, a lot of stupidity around the fans and the blaming, all coming from that mob about our inability to be able to fulfil the obligation of getting fans into Ibrox come January. When then you see things out there that they never got planning permission or approval for whatever construction work they had to do to put up safety nets and such. But for them to just come out and so kind of vocally, it was Brendan Rodgers on this occasion, come out and say, this is not a Rangers Celtic problem, this is a Rangers problem, and really turn the screw on that. And then the club just to sit there and be quiet and not really say anything is a bit of a nuisance. But I don't know, I think that's a sign of something else when you start to point fingers at other people. You don't want people to see exactly what's going on in your own patch. So we'll maybe see if that comes to fruition or not. But I was saying to some folks, and for this game in particular on the weekend there, that for the first Old Firm game of the season, I'd just love it. Honestly love it if we just got back to the mentality of just getting right in their faces, that like caring not a jot about them, and just went in with the contempt that they absolutely show for us time and time again. I loved it when Stevie G had us do it, get right in their faces, give them next to no time to think about anything, always driving, see how they like it, because that's what they've been doing to us for a few years, and it's absolutely worked for them. So I don't know, I guess we'll see how that goes over time. But Sunday is a good place to start. Let's just say that. Hell for leather, right in about them, do them in, and then see where we go from there. In terms of RTV, didn't hear anything about RTV last week. We do still have to get back to all the clubs about the RTV survey, and that is absolutely literally happening right now. We're just compiling all the information. We still have to dialogue with RTV and then get back to all of the clubs with the overview of what the season is going to look like. On to shout-outs for this week. The first one I'd like to give is, right, we've got a time difference here, obviously. I'm in Calgary in Canada, and that's 7 hours behind the UK. So when there's an early game on the weekend, it's typically 5 or 5:15 or 5:30 a.m. For me, I always do Eastern Standard Time because the majority of the NARSA clubs are on Eastern Standard Time, and it's a bit of a tip of the hat to them, and it saves me going through all the time zones. But one thing I don't ever do is get up early for any other game other than a Rangers game. Even if it was a massive English Premiership game, I don't really have an affiliation or affinity with any team, so I kind of don't care about those early games. But if I happened to be up, I would watch them, of course. But when I get up and that mob have been playing, especially against a team from literally the most beautiful city in the entire world, literally, it's nice to be able to get a wee bit of feedback. So when I get up, I kind of pretend I'm not interested, but I look at my phone and then I see a message, and the message comes from a pal of mine back home, a guy called John O'Donnell, who is a season ticket holder at Ibrox, and he says, "Does it make you proud to be from Paisley?" That was the message, or a version of that, very close to that anyway. So then my heart skips a beat, I get some butterflies in my stomach, I quickly open up the Live Score app, and I see that mob has beat St Mirren 3-0 with 2 relatively early goals. The game wasn't even a game, and I'm like, what's he talking about? Then he shares this video. This was the point of the message. He shared this video, you might have seen it already, of a couple of, I don't know if they're Jakies or they're stoners or whatever they are, I'm not sure, but this couple wrecked a shop, and then they both got ragdolled outside the shop in Cossyside Street in Paisley, and it's a tough watch, it's a rough watch, and it doesn't make me proud to be from Paisley when I see things like that, but I am eternally proud of being from Paisley. But John, my message of this shout out is, don't do that, man. Don't do that first thing on a Sunday morning when we're looking for the team from Paisley to do something against that other mob, to give us something different to look forward to in terms of this weekend's game. That was a brilliant and then very deflating start to my day around about 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Actually, it's probably a little bit later than that, maybe 7:30 or so, whatever it is. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, the Ben Davies, congratulations, good luck to him for his loan spell at Birmingham. I hope that's a good fit for him. I can't imagine we would see him back at Ibrox in a playing capacity. I'd just like to wish him the best of luck. He's a good player, but just not really suited to our league, not really suited to our style of play. He had a bit of a kind of Bambi look about him, didn't he? There was, do you know what? I think I've mentioned this before. Not a lot of personality, not a lot of drive to win. I don't see that on our players' faces a lot. So that's what I'd love to kind of get back there. But good luck and congratulations to Ben Davies. Here's a funny thing from a shout-outs perspective. This past Saturday, we try and have our AGM as close as possible to the beginning of the season. Usually it's the first 8 a.m. game, 8 a.m. in Calgary, that is, that we have it on. But I was out of town. I was in Invermere with Leo, so we decided to hold the AGM on Saturday, just after the Ross County game, and we had, I think, the lowest crowd that we've had in years and years and years. We had 6 people there, and 4 of the 6 were already on the committee. We didn't have a quorum. We couldn't hold the AGM, and it just goes to show you just cannot predict what the public are going to do. From a NARSA perspective, it's the same anytime we're ever putting tickets on sale or trying to predict what we think might happen in terms of popularity of a particular destination or a particular event or a particular set of VIPs that are coming with us or whatever. It's just such a fascinating study of human beings that I'm expecting an 8 o'clock kickoff. We'll serve beer at 9 o'clock. We'll get through the meetings. The meetings are always fairly light touch, and then we'll have a couple of pints and then we'll head up the road. And everyone else was like, nah, I don't think I fancy it. So they missed a good atmosphere. They missed a good result. I'm sure they've seen it on their own. They just didn't make their way down to the club. But yeah, that was fascinating. And one last thing from a shout out perspective is the women's team. I mentioned them briefly earlier. As you'll know and remember, they lost the league last year. I think it ended up being something like 14 goals or something like that, 13 or 14 goals. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they lost it in goal difference. Threw away some silly points towards the end of the season when they had it completely in their grasp, I should say. Somewhat similar to the men's team, but we weren't quite as dominant in the other games. It wasn't a complete shoe-in that we would be able to see the games out, and of course it unravelled a wee bit after that. But the women's team have played 4 games, scored 33 goals for, 0 against, and they are joint top of the league. Who is it now? I think it's the Celtic women's team and Hibs, I believe, as well. Hibs seem to be winning quite heavily as well, so it looks like maybe they've done some investment in their team as well. But 4 games, 33 goals and 0 against. Let's do something like that on the men's side, and then we'll really start to get excited. Why not, eh? On the convention update, we do have 290 days and 41 weeks until we go wild down in Osceola County, Kissimmee, Florida, from June the 12th to the 15th, and that is, of course, at Omni Orlando at Champions Gate. You will have seen I was threatening, let's say promising, for a time that we would have some player announcements. Originally, we had John Brown on his own, and then when we confirmed Mark Hateley, who you'll know, of course, are both ambassadors of our beloved Rangers Football Club, we decided to get them together and do a joint announcement. We announced it on our website and Rangers announced it on their website. I'll put the Rangers link in case you haven't seen it on the link for today's. I'll put the link on the blurb for today's podcast as well. Alcohol pricing is out there, you've heard that before. We are considering entertainment options, getting closer to understanding what that looks like as we go from that. And in terms of the golf, we're getting very close on the golf. We did get first pass pricing from them last week. We got back to them, I think it was either Friday or on the weekend, and I actually owe the guy a phone call because he phoned today and asked me to give him a call back when I was asking some questions. So probably just a better conversation on the phone than over email, and then we'll take it from there. But we might be quite close to getting the golf out as well. And the hotel rooms, of course, have been out for quite some time. For booking, that is $199 for standard rooms plus 14.5% tax, which is roughly about $29. So it's about $228 per room per night, and they will take a deposit. And ticket pricing is a matter of priority here. We have established what the ticket pricing is going to be. I was hoping to do some testing on the ticket pricing on the weekend, didn't get a chance to do that, so we'll get the testing done this week, and the tickets will be on sale unless something bizarre goes with the testing, which I'm very confident that it won't. We'll get the tickets on sale next week, and hopefully that'll be another wee boost to confirming the fact that you are going and you have secured your tickets. We are supposed to be having our regular bi-weekly meeting with Rangers this week, but I'm actually doing a talk at a company downtown in Calgary here around about the same time. Actually, I would be travelling about the same time as the meeting, so I might actually take the meeting from the car, or ask for it to be a wee bit earlier or a wee bit later, or maybe push it to Thursday. I'm not 100% sure how we'll do that yet, but I don't want to miss that because we're getting some momentum on there and seeing how that goes. One thing we did do when we did the announcements last week of John Brown and Mark Hateley, we then get feedback on social media. You know, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and some of the feedback, like this, I know I've said this before, so if you're a regular listener, I just don't understand social media. It's anti-social media for the most part. It really is. And when we put it through, we got some really good traction. Rangers did their own announcements and tagged us in it just to get as much reach as we possibly can, and I believe the Experience Kissimmee were on the trail of resharing and such at the same time. And so we got a bunch of questions which I have answered for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks on the podcast, which is fine. Not everyone listens to the podcast, but if you read the blurb for the podcast, you would maybe get a wee sense of idea of what's being covered. And then we just get some, I think they're called trolls, and the trolls are just out there throwing abuse out and talking a whole bunch of utter, absolute garbage about like stuff they would never say to anyone's face, but as they're sitting there on their phone or their computer or whatever it is, the nonsense that people talk. The point I'm making here is, what I said to our comms team is, get me everything, absolutely everything. We'll have a wee bit of a laugh about the content that's came out there, and I'll answer any questions that have been posed. And as it turns out, there wasn't really that much stuff to laugh about. It was kind of cringeworthy, some of it. Some of it was, can we get these guys to play next weekend at Sharkhead so that we can have a chance of winning, and all that sort of banter. So there was three main questions there that I did want to address today. The first one was from Alicia Wiggins down in Florida herself, and she said, is there any Facebook group made for next year's convention? I thought we'd communicated that before, and I'm thinking possibly we might not have, so I'll put the link to the Facebook group in the blurb for today's pod, and you can absolutely access it from there, and you'll see everything that we post through the other socials. We'll get on there. Hopefully we'll get some discussion, dialogue, banter and things like that on there. That's primarily managed by Big Colin down in Orlando. The second one was, have you stopped the GBP, the Govan Proddy Boys, from attending? And that was from Wer Moose, W-E-R Moose, and that was on Facebook. I guess the answer is yes, but not in terms of stop, you can't come to this event and you're never going to get invited back. As I've mentioned a few times before, we are going in a different entertainment direction for this one convention to give it a go, to see what it goes like, to see what it looks like, to see what it feels like, to see how the guests enjoyed it, and if they loved it, that's great. If they didn't, we'll learn from that and we'll do something different come the following year. But, it's not like a ban on flute bands for the convention or anything of the sort. We just decided to try something different, which we've been considering for quite some time, by the way. So it's not just a new thing that's come in. I know there's conspiracy theorists out there saying because Rangers are involved, Rangers told us they couldn't have a flute band. I told Rangers we weren't having a flute band, and that was what it was, and they said okay, fine, and we just moved on with the planning from there. And the last one was, when do the tickets go on sale? I've answered that a wee bit earlier there, and that was from Chris James. That was also on Facebook, and that will I was hoping to announce it today, as I'd mentioned last week, but it just didn't happen for today. So it will be guaranteed 100% on the pod next week. We'll get the announcement out there, and hopefully that comes on the back of a favourable result up in the East End. So here's a couple of wee anecdote things that aren't insulting or anything like that. I don't know who sent these ones over, but as I mentioned earlier, one of them was talking about Brown and Haitley, Bomber Brown and Mark Haitley. Them two boys would still do better than our current defenders and forwards, maybe. Another person said, are they there to sell pints? Possibly, you never know. And the last one was, never mind NARSA, we'll need them at Tora Bora a week on Sunday. So I'm assuming Tora Bora is Sharkhead. I don't know what the Tora Bora reference, maybe I should get educated on what that looks like, but yeah, we could probably use them in that respect. On to the communications, the Gers Guide for this week, inside Hampden for the Ross County game, and then there's an overview of the Rangers women's game against Montrose, which was 9-0 on the weekend. Interestingly, nothing significant going to be published from the club on Tuesday or Wednesday. Then on Thursday there's a preview of the Old Firm game with Connor Barron. On Friday, it didn't mention it on the Gers Guide, but I imagine the press conference would be on Friday. I can't imagine they would do it on Saturday. Maybe they might, but maybe they won't. And of course, Friday is transfer deadline day, and it's also Europa League draw day as well. So there's a new format for the Europa League, which I'll probably talk about next week, depending on how the game at Sharkhead goes, probably. But some exciting things happening on Friday. On Saturday, there's a feature on Rangers TV with Pedro Mendes talking about the 4-2 derby win or the 4-2 Old Firm game win, the anniversary of that. And there's also a Dundee United women's game preview with Rio Hardy on Saturday as well. And then on Sunday, of course, is the game against them, and it's Dundee United versus Rangers in the Scottish Power Women's Premier League, and that's at Foundation Park with a 4 p.m. UK kick-off. I'm looking at the squad numbers here on my notes again. The only one that's different from when I introduced this 2 or 3 weeks ago is that Ben Davies is no longer there, so I guess it's going to change between now and next week, or maybe it's not. Hopefully it is though, and we'll see what that looks like. We're still looking through the RSC registration process. I really need to get on that. and figure that part out. And just a reminder of the events that are coming up here. We do have, presented by Parks Motor Group, an evening with Jermaine Defoe and Kris on Friday the 30th of August, which of course is this Friday. Then that one gets to come off the list. And the 27th of September is the Rangers Ladies Lunch, and you might have seen on the Rangers website that Pedro Mendes and Lee McCulloch have been confirmed as going to attend that one as well, so that'll be a real thrill for everyone involved with that. And then of course the Rangers Charity Foundation Ball, and the 80s themed ball is being held on Saturday the 2nd of November at the Doubletree by Hilton in Glasgow City Centre. Thanks very much. I did a personal plea last week on the pod just to see if I could get a wee bit more traction within the Rangers community of people that were interested in self-development, self-education, and I think, I'm not sure how many other followers or whatever, but I did want to do a shout out to Billy Reid, who jumped on it right away. Billy's from the Bayou City Loyal down in Texas, and he was kind enough to follow me and has been engaging in some of my, predominantly I think my LinkedIn posts, or maybe the Facebook posts as well. But if anybody else wants to know about Gary Gillan coaching, please by all means visit garygillan.com and you'll see what I'm doing over there. Okay, my friends, that will do it for this week. As always, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you very, very much for taking the time to listen. Please do share it with whomever you think might enjoy it. It's a massive game this week. It's a early season marker that we've got an opportunity to set down. I'd love Philippe Clement to, as I said earlier, channel his inner Gerrard and go out there and say, stuff this mob. Let's do what we came here to do, which is take the 3 points and move away. Could you imagine we come away from there with 3 points? The meltdown that would happen at that side of the city, and the absolute confidence that we would take from that. Let's lay down a marker and see how that flies for the remainder of the season. Please and thanks, Rangers. Take care, folks. All the very, very best to you, and I hope your team wins on the weekend. Follow.